For years, Hollywood believed it understood the rules. Build a prestige film, win critical acclaim, collect awards, dominate headlines, and eventually dominate the global box office. That formula seemed almost untouchable when Oppenheimer exploded into a worldwide phenomenon. The film wasn't just successful. It became a cultural event. Audiences packed theaters. Critics praised it. Industry insiders called it proof that serious, adult-driven storytelling could still conquer the modern entertainment landscape. And then something happened that almost nobody saw coming. Thousands of miles away, in one of the world's most influential movie markets, a different film began attracting attention. At first, it looked like another high-profile studio release. Another ambitious biographical drama. Another Hollywood gamble. But as ticket sales started coming in, conversations inside the industry began changing. Analysts started noticing unusual momentum. Entertainment reporters began asking questions. Fans flooded social media with disbelief. Because according to multiple reports, Michael, the highly anticipated film centered on the life of Michael Jackson, was generating the kind of audience reaction that studios dream about. And in Japan, one of the most important overseas markets for Hollywood, the numbers sparked a conversation few expected to have. How did a film surrounded by enormous expectations, controversy, nostalgia, and decades of public debate suddenly find itself being compared to one of the biggest cinematic achievements of the decade? More importantly, what does this tell us about audiences today? Because this story is about far more than box office rankings. It's about legacy, memory, celebrity, and the extraordinary power of a cultural figure whose influence continues to reach across generations long after his death. To understand why this moment has captured so much attention, we have to go back. Not to the production of the film, not to the marketing campaign, not even to Hollywood. We have to go back to the phenomenon itself. Michael Jackson. Long before streaming platforms existed, long before social media shaped public opinion, before viral trends could turn ordinary moments into global events, there was Michael Jackson, a performer whose fame reached a level that modern celebrity culture struggles to comprehend. His music crossed borders. His image crossed languages. His performances crossed generations. Whether someone lived in New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, Seoul, or Sao Paulo, there was a strong chance they knew exactly who Michael Jackson was. His rise from child performer to global superstar became one of the most remarkable success stories in entertainment history. Albums shattered records. Concerts sold out within hours. Music videos transformed the industry. His influence stretched so far that many artists who dominate charts today still openly credit him as one of their greatest inspirations. Yet the story was never simple. The larger his fame became, the larger the spotlight grew. Every success generated headlines. Every controversy generated even more. By the time the world entered the 21st century, Michael Jackson had become something few public figures ever experience. He was no longer merely a celebrity. He had become a symbol. To supporters, he represented artistic genius. To critics, he represented unanswered questions. To the media, he represented endless fascination. And to the public, he remained one of the most debated figures in modern entertainment history. Even after his death in 2009, the conversation never stopped. Documentaries reignited old debates. Books revisited allegations. Fans defended his legacy. Critics challenged it. New generations discovered his music while simultaneously discovering the controversies attached to his name. Few cultural figures have inspired such intense emotional division. And that reality created a massive challenge for anyone attempting to bring his story back to the big screen, because making a film about Michael Jackson was never going to be like making a typical music biopic. It wasn't simply about recreating famous performances. It wasn't simply about telling a success story. The filmmakers faced a difficult question. How do you tell the story of someone who remains both celebrated and controversial? How do you satisfy lifelong fans while addressing a public conversation that has lasted for decades? And perhaps most importantly, how do you convince audiences to show up? Inside Hollywood, those questions carried enormous financial consequences. Biographical films can be incredibly profitable, but they can also fail spectacularly. Studios invest hundreds of millions of dollars hoping audiences will connect emotionally with the story being told. If they don't, the consequences can be severe. That risk became even greater in the post-pandemic entertainment landscape. Moviegoing habits changed. Streaming transformed consumer expectations. Competition intensified. Attention spans fragmented. Every theatrical release suddenly faced an increasingly difficult challenge. Give audiences a reason to leave their homes. A reason to buy a ticket. A reason to choose one film over countless alternatives. That is why industry observers were watching Michael so closely. The project carried enormous expectations from the moment it was announced, not only because of the subject matter, but because of the potential audience. Millions of devoted fans around the world remain deeply connected to Michael Jackson's music. Many had waited years for a major cinematic portrayal. Others were skeptical. Some questioned whether such a film should even exist. And that tension created something Hollywood rarely ignores. Curiosity. The kind of curiosity that can become a powerful commercial force. As production moved forward, every casting announcement generated headlines. Every production update attracted attention. Every leaked image triggered discussion across social media. The project slowly transformed from a movie into an event. But events can create pressure. And pressure creates expectations. By the time the film approached release, the stakes had become enormous. Fans expected authenticity. Studios expected profits. Critics expected scrutiny. The media expected controversy. What happened next would surprise nearly everyone watching. Because the conversation was about to shift. Away from production budgets. Away from casting decisions. Away from speculation. And toward something far more tangible. The audience. The people buying tickets. The people filling theaters. The people whose choices ultimately decide whether Hollywood celebrates a film or forgets it. And when those first signals started emerging from Japan, executives, analysts, and entertainment reporters suddenly found themselves paying very close attention. Because the numbers were telling a story. A story that was becoming impossible to ignore. And that story was only beginning. The first signs were subtle. Not the kind of headline-grabbing numbers that immediately dominate entertainment news. Not the type of opening weekend figure that sends Hollywood executives rushing to television interviews. Instead, it started the way many major industry shifts begin. Quietly. A theater here. A strong audience turnout there. A collection of reports suggesting something unusual was happening. In Japan, moviegoers were responding to Michael with a level of enthusiasm that many analysts had not fully anticipated. At first glance, that might not sound surprising. After all, Michael Jackson's connection to Japan stretches back decades. Long before modern social media created global fandoms, Japanese audiences had already embraced his music, performances, and artistic identity. His popularity there wasn't temporary. It wasn't trend-driven. It wasn't built on a single album cycle. It had endured across generations. Parents who grew up listening to Michael Jackson introduced his music to their children. Television specials, music programs, documentaries, and cultural retrospectives continued keeping his legacy alive. For many Japanese fans, Michael Jackson wasn't simply an American entertainer. He was part of global pop culture history. And history matters. Especially when audiences feel emotionally connected to a story. That emotional connection became increasingly visible as the film entered the marketplace. The reactions weren't limited to hardcore fans. Casual moviegoers were showing interest. Young audiences were curious. Older audiences felt nostalgic. And that combination can be extremely powerful. Because nostalgia alone rarely guarantees success. Curiosity alone rarely guarantees success. But when nostalgia and curiosity collide, something different happens. People want to experience the event for themselves. They don't want to hear about it secondhand. They don't want to read summaries online. They want to sit in a theater and witness it firsthand. That desire creates momentum. And momentum is one of the most valuable forces in the entertainment business. Hollywood spends billions of dollars every year trying to manufacture momentum. Marketing campaigns attempt to create it. Press tours attempt to create it. Celebrity appearances attempt to create it. Sometimes they succeed. Sometimes they don't. But genuine audience-driven momentum is different. It spreads naturally. One conversation leads to another. One recommendation becomes 10. One social media post reaches thousands. And before anyone realizes what's happening, a film begins taking on a life of its own. That is exactly why industry observers became increasingly fascinated by what was unfolding, because the story was no longer centered solely on the film itself. The story was becoming about audience behavior. And audience behavior often reveals larger cultural trends. Why were people responding so strongly? Why was interest remaining high? Why were discussions spreading across online communities? The answers weren't necessarily simple. In fact, they pointed towards something much deeper. A growing divide between critics and audiences. For years, Hollywood has struggled with a question that becomes more important every year. Who ultimately decides a film's success? Professional reviewers? Industry insiders? Awards organizations? Or ordinary viewers? Historically, all four groups influenced the conversation. But the internet changed that equation. Today, millions of people can instantly share opinions online. A single viral reaction can reach more viewers than a traditional newspaper review. A fan-created video can influence public perception just as effectively as a major media appearance. Power has become decentralized. And that shift has fundamentally altered the entertainment landscape. Nowhere was that more visible than in discussions surrounding Michael. Supporters argued that audiences were embracing the opportunity to revisit the story of one of the most influential performers in history. Critics questioned how the film handled controversial aspects of his life. Others focused on the performances, production quality, and storytelling decisions. Meanwhile, millions of viewers simply wanted to decide for themselves. That dynamic created a fascinating environment. Every positive reaction generated counterarguments. Every criticism generated defenses. Every discussion generated even more attention. In a strange way, the debate itself became part of the film's marketing. Because controversy attracts curiosity. And curiosity sells tickets. Hollywood understands this reality better than almost anyone. The industry has witnessed it repeatedly throughout history. Films that inspire intense conversation often maintain public attention longer than films that generate universal agreement. People become emotionally invested. They choose sides. They defend positions. And they continue talking long after the credits roll. That ongoing conversation can become incredibly valuable, especially in international markets. Japan occupies a unique position within the global entertainment ecosystem. It is one of the world's largest movie markets, one of the most influential cultural exporters, one of the most sophisticated audiences anywhere. Success there carries significance far beyond ticket sales. It signals something important about global audience engagement. And that is precisely why comparisons involving major Hollywood releases attract so much attention. When analysts began discussing Michael alongside films such as Oppenheimer, the comparison wasn't merely about numbers. It was about expectations. Because these films represent very different types of cinematic experiences. One explores scientific history, war, politics, and moral responsibility. The other explores fame, music, performance, celebrity, and cultural legacy. Different genres, different audiences, different emotional journeys. Yet both demonstrate something increasingly valuable: the ability to transform into cultural events. And cultural events are becoming rare. In today's fragmented media environment, capturing mass attention is more difficult than ever. Audiences have endless entertainment options. Streaming platforms release new content daily. Social media constantly competes for attention. Video games command enormous engagement. Podcasts dominate commuting hours. The competition never stops. Against that backdrop, convincing millions of people to purchase movie tickets becomes an extraordinary achievement. Which raises another question. What exactly were audiences responding to? Was it the music? The nostalgia? The performances? The spectacle? Or was something deeper taking place? Some observers believe the answer lies in generational memory. For younger viewers, Michael Jackson represents discovery, an opportunity to explore a figure they know mostly through clips, headlines, and historical discussions. For older viewers, he represents remembrance, a chance to reconnect with moments that defined entire eras of popular culture. Those two emotional experiences are different, but both can be equally powerful. One is driven by curiosity, the other by memory. When a film successfully appeals to both, its audience expands dramatically, and expansion creates opportunity. Every additional demographic broadens potential reach. Every new audience segment increases longevity. Every positive reaction introduces the story to someone else. This process often resembles a chain reaction. One viewer becomes two. Two become 10. 10 become hundreds. Hundreds become thousands. And suddenly, what looked like a standard theatrical release begins resembling a phenomenon. The entertainment industry has witnessed this pattern countless times, yet predicting it remains extraordinarily difficult. Some films arrive with massive expectations and disappear quickly. Others arrive quietly and surprise everyone. That uncertainty is what makes box office analysis so fascinating, because behind every ticket sale exists a human decision. Someone chose to spend their time. Someone chose to spend their money. Someone chose to experience that story. Those choices reveal cultural priorities, and cultural priorities are constantly changing. Which brings us to one of the most interesting aspects of this entire story, the timing. Because Michael entered theaters during a period of profound transformation for Hollywood itself, studios are facing enormous pressure. Production costs continue rising. Audience habits continue evolving. Streaming competition remains intense. Global markets have become more important than ever. In many cases, international performance now determines whether a major release achieves financial success. That reality means every market matters. But some markets matter more than others. Japan remains one of those markets. Its influence extends beyond revenue. Success there often signals broader international appeal. And when a film begins exceeding expectations, industry leaders pay attention. Very close attention. Because sometimes the numbers reveal something larger than commercial success. Sometimes they reveal a shift in audience sentiment, a shift in cultural interests, a shift in what people want from entertainment. And if that is what was happening here, the implications could extend far beyond a single film. Because Hollywood isn't just watching Michael. Hollywood is watching the audience, trying to understand what viewers are saying with their wallets, trying to understand what stories still resonate, trying to understand what kind of cinematic experiences can break through the noise of modern life. The answers could shape future projects for years to come. But before anyone can understand where this story is heading, another battle must be examined. A battle that unfolded far away from movie theaters. A battle fought across comment sections, social media platforms, reaction channels, fan communities, and viral posts. Because while ticket sales were making headlines, something equally dramatic was happening online. And the internet was about to turn this conversation into something much bigger.